And should be live now. Should be live now. How's it going? How's it going, Grimdark enjoyers? What's poppin'? How's everyone's hobby life? Well, the plan today is to paint some Reapers paint some Leapers and check out that balanced data slate. Probably sooner rather than later, but I would like to do a little bit of painting first. Here is a Leaper, Leaper 3 of 6, partially painted. So, returning to the model, I can see basically just the tail section of the carapace has been mottled. I got some modeling happening on the front, a little bit. Okay, it's a bit further along than I remembered. That puts a little feather in my cap. Pyro, welcome to the stream. It's quiet on that side right now. Huh. It's quiet on that side right now. Huh. I am Wildcat. Don't quite get the reference there, Pyro, but happy to see you tuning into the stream. Hobby camaraderie is always appreciated. Tramari says, hey you guys, I'm gonna vacuum soon, so I won't be able to hear the stream. I've put it off for too long. You take care of all that dust, Tramari. You get to vacuuming. I'm sure there's a rubric marine reference we could make about purging the dust from the biosphere. Okay, so I guess we should begin modeling up the other sections here. And then relatively shortly we'll take a look at the balanced data slate changes. I skimmed it, but I'll give it a proper read on stream with you guys. I think that'll be interesting. You can point out things perhaps I have not considered. Voidspark77, welcome to the stream. How goes it with the 40k? It's going pretty well. I noticed there were some balanced data slate changes, which popped up earlier today, which I plan to check out. Sort of good timing, because I usually stream on Wednesdays, so that definitely gives this stream a bit more something out of the ordinary. Beyond that, we're gonna paint some more of this, of these Reapers. It's very important. You know, when I first made the collection of models for High Fleet Gengar, it was very much skewed for what was competitive at the time. I was sort of involved in a semi-competitive event at the time, so it skewed the list building choices. Even I am swayed by the desire for power. But this time around, I want to build out High Fleet Gengar in a more thematic way, right? Like, it feels awkward to me that I don't have the Gengar thematic list for the army that I own, right? That I created. It should be corrected, I think. It should be corrected. Voidspark says, I heard some interesting things about the Custodes data slate. Ah, yes. Yes, I'm sure we'll take a look at it. Yeah, there was a few detachments as well, which I'm sure I'll take a look at too. Pyro says, question, was I right on that guess on Instagram? I am Alfarius. Oh, were you right on the guess on Instagram? If I remember correctly, Pyro, you mentioned your guess about the the Tyranid head I put a teaser post about. I think you guessed if it's a predator or alien. I think that was your comment. Or like a hybrid of the predator and alien. Yeah, you're set. You're on theme. That's for sure. I think I indicated that in the reply. It's gonna be a custom lictor of some kind. Sort of like a... I want a parasite of Mortrex, but of Hive Fleet Gengar, if that makes sense, right? Like a Red Terror, like a, you know, a unique derivative, branched, specialized kind of bioform, I guess. And I think, you know, making your own characters is a fun part of the hobby, so... Like, why does it have to only be Space Marines? Ricardo Alonso, welcome to the stream. I made 12 of these. I loved if they were stronger, more like mini lictors. Oh, you're talking about the leapers, eh? The leapers there, Ricardo. Yeah, I tried them out in a game yesterday. They were deceptively survivable against small arms fire, thanks to the stealth and T5, I believe. So they were tougher than I thought. They were effective for what I used them for, which was killing rangers. Killing Eldar rangers. But I thought they performed admirably. Are lictors that much stronger? I think lictors have the same amount of attacks, but more AP and damage. I think it's AP2 damage, too? Maybe? And they have precision. So if you throw them into a unit with a character, you maybe pick out the leader. And then if you do that, I think you get a CP, because that's what the lictor's ability is. So it's not terrible. I think lictors are very fun. I don't know. I got to live the dream with the parasite of Mortrex. Well, maybe I spoke too soon. I wasn't able to spawn Rippers. But, you know, I was able to rapid ingress the parasite. Totally uninteractable because it's a lone operative. You can't shoot it. And then on my turn, I went in, did Battle Shock, denied Defense Stronghold. Pretty cool, honestly. Right? That's kind of the dream, to have a spooky lone operative Tyranid bug infest the backlines. Pyra says, now for some reason I want a Tyranid Furger from Monster Hunter. That or maybe base the Hive Tyrant of Tiamat on Gore. Speaking of Hive Fleet Tiamat, I am very, or Tiamat, I'm thinking, I'm definitely feeling a thematic list build for Hive Fleet Tiamat at the moment. The detachment options aren't great, but I think it'd make do with Invasion Fleet, probably. Okay, you know what? Let me close the wet palette, and I'll take a look at this balance status slate. Try best to get it out of the way, because what? There's a balanced data slate, and I think 3 detachments to look at, which is kind of a lot. It's going to eat up more time than we think. Tramari says, don't confuse your drink with your paint water again. Look, that's a secret. We don't talk about that. Okay, let me check my OBS elements here. I should have a Warhammer Community source here already. Is this it? There we go. We did it. Okay, top of the page. Balanced data slate is here. Everyone get excited. Oh my god, it's a whole new game. Adepta Sororitas. So these are the changes. Let's get the broad strokes here. The Adepta Sororitas have struggled a bit in their fight against the foes of the Imperium. Yeah, because they were over-nerfed. So we have reverted the part of Acts of Faith that allows you to gain a miracle dice each time a unit is destroyed. We were not happy with the results last time and hope This puts the faction into a more fun and fair place. Well, look, at least they're willing to double back the overcorrection. That's progress for Games Workshop. I still think we should have a higher standard for praise, but maybe I'm also getting fatigued. And my threshold for praise has lowered. We also brought down the points on a handful of units to better represent their strength without having access to as many miracle dice as they did in the past. Interesting. I actually would be curious to see how they feel on the tabletop with reduced points but with less miracle dice. Because in the past, when they've lowered points and not adjusted miracle dice, you had just a crazy amount of actionable units that could just force probability with their miracle dice. So I guess I'm kind of curious to see how that feels. Adeptus Custodes. The Adeptus Custodes have been having a great time recently, and we are quite pleased to see people playing them in different ways. To make sure everyone is having the best time playing against them, we've moved around points on a few units for the Emperor's Golden Favorites. The Blade Champion and Custodian Wardens have gone up as well, as we still feel they're more powerful than their points. Okay. The Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought and Hellman Dreadnought have also received minor increases, as the Solar Spearhead Detachment has made them shine quite brightly. Yeah, I'm not up to snuff on the Custodes detachments. Solar Spearhead, that may be the new one, or it could be the old one. I honestly couldn't tell you. We'll learn soon enough once I get to the detachment, once I get to the PDFs. They reduced the points on a few units that we felt were more expensive than their comparable units, such as Alea, the Custodian Guard, and Knight Centura, and Shield Captains. Well, that's something. Adeptus Mechanicus, Belisarius Call, and Tech Priest Dominus have fallen in points a little to make it easier to include them in your army. Look, I don't love that. I fundamentally don't think the solution for AdMech is points decreases. Sure, it will yield the result Games Workshop will want for the optical win of their 45-55 AdMech performance outcomes, right? Win rate outcomes from tournaments and organized events. But I still think they should be an elite army. They should be hoardable with, you have some fodder unit options in the army. But fundamentally, the quality units should be quality. Eldari, we have made a change to Astraman's ability, the Hand of Asuran. Changing its anti-infantry ability to 5+, up from 4+, to reduce the amount of devastating wounds it could put out. Yeah, that's probably reasonable. Astraman's kind of like a bully. It is once per battle, but it is in the hands of a savvy player. It can be very punishing, let's say. And look, anti-infantry 5+ is still good. Astra Militarum, we've made changes to the Combat Engineer's Remote Mine, reducing the mortal wounds to D3, bringing it in line with the Kasserkin Meltamine. Yeah, look at this. Okay, like this. Oh God, this is where my conspiracy brain starts to turn. It's like, yeah, they sold product and now they must adjust it to bring it in line. That's so fucking rude. I don't know. It's not rude. Look, it's probably the right call, but I can't help but think of it as like sinister corporate behavior. Like we could never have foreseen the rules would be so strong. But now that we know they're strong and the products happen to be sold, we will adjust it for the health of the game. Like, oh my God. Okay, Bridgehead Strike Detachment has proven to be very strong. Yep, that is true. So we've increased the points on the units it boosts. We've also changed the Bridgehead Strike Fire Zone Purge rule to have +1 to hit instead of +1 to wound. Okay, that's significant. +1 to hit's still nice if you're hitting on 2s. Because, yeah, Scions are an elite standard. So 3+, always hitting on 2s. I wonder if that renders orders redundant. I mean, like the take aim. I mean, maybe it's irrelevant. In any case, where were we? Additionally, the firing hot stratagem has increased the CP as it's particularly powerful. I don't actually know the context of the firing hot stratagem. Probably for hot shot volley guns, or hot shot las guns, maybe. Blood Angels, certain Death Company Marine units, and Death Company Captain have been reduced in points to bring them in line with the other Codex units. On the other hand, the Rage-Fueled Warrior enhancement brings so much rage it's getting a moderate points increase. Yeah, that's probably fair. Rage-Fueled Warrior is potent. Chaos Demons. The Legion of Excess has proven quite powerful, and we're making changes to the detachment rule to be less punishing. Seductive Gambit now no longer grants full rerolls to hit and wound, though units still get full rerolls within their Shadow of Chaos. We feel this is more fair and links better with the twisting powers of demons outside of the warp. Okay, so it's more involved. It's more integrated with your army rule, which I don't hate. You know, unfortunately, I just with too many... There's too many competing interests in the hobby to be able to play everything as it's hot and fresh, so I never got a chance to really try out the Legion of Excess, even though it was so good. And there was a point in time, especially at the start of 10th edition, where I was really miffed, I guess you could say. I was really miffed about how the Slaanesh army rules were. But it is what it is. Thieves of Pain stratagem has been changed so that the unit intercepting damage must be visible to the target, as was previously possible to hide the unit that the damage was being moved to before. Okay. That seems reasonable. We have now removed the Battle Shock portion of the Overwhelming Excess. A lot of problems for this Legions of Excess, eh? Leagues of Votann. Since Leagues of Votann are always judging both you and your army, the army rule now allows you to pick 2 enemy units at the start of the battle and give them 2 judgment tokens. We've reduced the starting values of the Oath Band's judged enemy units to align with these changes. You see, like Leagues of Votann and Admech, I feel kind of similar about, because I fundamentally feel they both are probably less elite than they are ought to be on average. But here, they're making rules changes, which I'm more privy to. Make them feel more valuable, right? Don't just give them more, thereby making them more expendable, right? Orcs. We've made a change to the Listen Ear rule in the Tactical Brigade detachment. That is the Blood Axes detachment, effectively. To better represent the Orc way of bossing each other around, Orcs units will now only get 1 tactic and will always make a leadership test to see if they need to smash some heads to get the message across. This change aligns better with the theme and reduces some of the stacking combos that were making some units too powerful. We also changed tank busters, so they need to see an enemy before they send out their bomb squigs, and tweak the wording to ensure they may only dispatch 1 at a time. Yeah, that's reasonable. Space Marines. We've been quite happy with the recent changes to Space Marines, but a few chapters have been attempting to claim they are Codex compliant, even though we are pretty sure they've never even attempted to look at the book. So we've clarified that the Oath of Moment benefit only works for Codex Space Marines detachments. Uriel Ventress can now only grant Deep Strike to Phobos, Gravis, and Tacticus. Yes. That is a good change, because Centurion's Deep Striking is oppressive. That's like a go figure, though, right? Like, how could you not foresee that being an issue? Because they gave him that enhanced utility through a FAQ, I believe. New certain sneaky Phobos lieutenants are able to move, shoot, move, and then charge. We've now limited We've now added a limitation to the strategic dispersal rule, so they can't declare a charge after moving. Reasonable, also an oversight, but good that it's being addressed. And wind swift evasion stratagem was targeting some units that would not be described as swift. As a result, we have now limited the targets of the stratagem to infantry and mounted units. I'm not sure what the wind swift evasion stratagem, what detachment that belongs to. But that is what it is. Uriel Ventress Canal, yeah. To be honest, I don't think Gladius or I don't think Ultramarines should have access to this Oath of Moment +1 to wound. I think it's a bit crazy. They have like more data sheets than some chapters, and legions have units, right? So it feels a bit like it's favoring them, if you ask me. Okay, so let's take a look at the documentation here. I don't know if we need to see the facts and erratas, but I do want to take a look at the detachments which are new, which I believe is Experimental Prototype Cadre, Solar Spearhead, Lions of the Emperor. No, maybe that's the new one. And you have more DACA. Those are the three, right? Those are the three new ones, or is there another new one? I have to cross-reference. They don't make it easy. I have to cross-reference with Grotmus. Yeah, so Grey Knight says Warpbane. So I guess Warpbane got an update. And Custodes was Solar Spearhead. Yeah, so Solar Spearhead is Grotmus, which means Lions of the Emperor is the new Custodes one. Man. Again, like, so many people are default, like, super grateful. It's like, oh, we have rules updates. We should be so praising of Games Workshop for doing this for us. But really, I mean, I feel like the bar is too low. Give me a better layout. Make it super intuitive. So these are our Space Marines updates. I don't know if I want to see this. I just kind of want to look at detachments more than erratas. Okay, so a Tau detachment for Experimental Prototype Cadre, which is basically Borkan, I believe. Yeah, I think Borkan's shtick was their experimental weaponry. I think that was... It might have been them or Sasea. I can't remember between the two of them. But look, you have some Tau subfaction representation here, which is a thematic win, right? And then you also have, well, not so much for Custodes, but more DACA. This is your Bad Moon's detachment. That's also a thematic win. Look at this, amazing. And what is Lions of the Emperor? Against all odds, each time. Okay, let's start with Lions of the Emperor, because there's a point I want to make about all of these. And I think it makes sense to look at Lions of the Emperor first. Okay, detachment rule. Each time an Adeptus Custodes unit from your army, excluding vehicles, makes an attack, if there are no other friendly units within 6 inches of that unit, add 1 to the hit roll and 1 to the wound roll. Okay, well, that's a potent benefit for being a hero. So this is your army of heroes kind of theme. The Adeptus Custodes are outnumbered on every battlefield upon which they fight. Yet no matter the foe, and no matter their number, the Lions of the Emperor will prevail. Enhancements, Superior Creation, Presadius, Fierce Conqueror, and add Mani Mortis. So I got some old favorites here from the old codex. Superior Creation, 1 model only. The first time the bear is destroyed, roll a d6 on a 2-up, get back up. With full wounds remaining. Super good, guys. Look at on a 2-up. I guess 2-up is standard for enhancements. I think of the Phoenix Gem. I think also is a 2-up. Fugin's for sure a 2-up. But full wounds remaining is extra nice. Persadius, the bearer gets lone operative and stealth. Also good. Tremendous benefits. Tremendous benefits. Just deep strike a single captain. Lock down some objective. Or rapid ingress, and then you're like I was describing with my Parasite of Mortrex, except this would be much scarier. You have a custodian, a shield captain, just dropping in, untargetable. Fierce Conqueror, shield captain only at the start of the fight phase until the end of the phase. Add 2 to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons equipped by the bearer for every 5 enemy models within 6 inches of the bearer, rounding down. Well, that's pretty cool. Certainly badass. More attacks is upping the quantity, which is just better than getting sustained. And Admani Mortis, shield captain only, improve the strength characteristic of melee weapons equipped by the bearer by 3, and improve the armor penetration and damage characteristic of those weapons by 1. That's amazing. A relic of the Dreadhost. Interesting. Okay. So this is effectively your Dreadhost attachment, I guess. Just noticed that here in the flavor text. All of these are shield captain except for Persadius. Oh no, you could give superior creation. Fierce Conqueror on a blade champion would be super good. But shield captain only, which is probably reasonable. Stratagems. Gilded Champion. Any phase after a character model from your army has used an once per battle ability on its status sheet. Your model can use that once per battle ability 1 additional time during the battle, but not in the same phase. Okay. It's a pretty steep exception. I can't recall offhand what the data sheets are, or what the abilities are for these custodians. But being able to proc a once per battle benefit when you need it is definitely going to be a potent exception, I think. Especially when those abilities are like shoot twice, right? I feel like that's one of their once per battle abilities. Defiant to the last. In the fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, so it's a defensive fight phase booster. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit is destroyed, if that model has not fought this phase, roll a d6, adding 2 to the result. If that model has the character keyword. On a 4-up, do not remove it from play. It can attack. Yep, fight on death. Okay. Fight on death. 4+ standard. Characters get on a 2+. Which is nice, honestly. Like, I feel like it's wasted design space whenever you have the option to use these stratagems on single model units, and then the odds are still 50-50. Happens often with, like, monster units, with Tyranids. But on a character, and a character can be in a unit too, so then you have all the value of the whole unit fighting, and then the character will be very likely to be fighting. It's pretty good. For 1 CP also. 1 CP fight on death. Peerless Warrior. Chris Julian. I see you in chat. Yeah, I've been neglecting chat a little bit. If you want me to see something, definitely put an at in the chat. But Chris Julian says, Christ bless you, that ability could be super useful. Yep. Peerless Warrior, fight phase. 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army that has not been selected to fight this phase. So it's a fight phase offense booster. There's a lot of design language that goes into stratagems, which I've been clamoring for since we were seeing stratagems in 8th edition, because the design language was just completely absent, right? But even still, it'd be nice to get key indicators of offensive and defensive, right? But look, we have a lot of symbols and color coding now, which is a step. Maybe 11th edition, guys. Maybe 11th edition will get those tags. Oh, wow. Wowee. My favorite. Unleash the Lions. Your command phase, 1 CP. Oh, look, it's all here. Alaris custodians are Aquilon custodians that are on the battlefield. That unit is split into separate units, each containing one model. These new units each have a starting strength of 1. Fantastic. 1 CP, Unleash the Lions. Super, super badass stratagem. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I love that. I was super bummed out that it wasn't in the Codex. Personally, I feel like that would make for an interesting detachment hook for the Custodes, as they are a low model count hyper elite army that is desperate to be flexible and have like superlative agency as individual models, right? I think that would be a really cool way to characterize them. In any case, that's a thematic win to have Unleash the Lions back. It's a shame it's not in your codex, but more on that later. Maneuver and fire for 1 CP in your movement phase. Just after a Custodes unit falls back, your unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn which it fell back. Yep, makes sense. Custodes, being an elite reactive army, should have a tool to get over the typical exception that comes from being engaged with enemies, right? So that makes sense that is here. And Swift as the Eagle. Funny name. 1 CP, it's in your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit has shot. One attempts Custodes unit from your army, excluding vehicle units that was selected as a target of one or more of the attacking unit's attacks. Your unit can make a normal move up to d6 inches. So a reactive move when fired upon, like a blood surge, effectively, for a CP. Which could be good, right? I mean, Custodes are pretty resilient. It's quite possible, you know, the enemy shoots you and you take no damage. It bounces off your high toughness, good armor save, invuln, maybe feel no pains, right? Then you just move. Move on to an objective, or set yourself up to be closer to where you want to be on your turn. Pretty good suite of stratagems. Okay. So, what we have here, and it's funny, I'm happy I noticed that this was technically a Dreadhost detachment. At least considering that this is, the flavor text is indicating it as such. But my point that I was alluding to earlier, guys, about these detachments, is that we have here what is effectively a Dreadhost detachment, right? And here we have what is essentially Bad Moons, and essentially a either Borkan or Sasea. I think it's Borkan. I think Sasea's thing was like urban warfare. But in any case, here we have 3 detachments that essentially should have been in the Codex, right? I mean, the Tau Codex had, I think, 4 detachments, like not thin, like less than the Emperor's Children Codex, and they're just an offshoot of Chaos Space Marines. Okay, they're not as, and that might be like a spicy take, but the Tau are certainly more of a faction in their own right than the Emperor's Children are. So it's very like weird to me that, like, look, it's cool that we're getting detachments, and it is an interesting thing Games Workshop is doing to mix up the meta and keep it alive, but if I was a Bad Moons guy and I had a Bad Moons army painted yellow that I lovingly crafted, I'd be kind of miffed if I bought the Codex and there wasn't a Bad Moons detachment in my 10th edition Orcs Codex. But if I go online and wait like a year afterwards, there's my Bad Moons detachment in a printable PDF. It's kind of... I guess it really grinds my thematic gears. That for the thematic rewards I would want Games Workshop to cater to, right? Oh no, maybe I'm alone in that. You guys can let me know if you feel otherwise. I feel like it's definitely hitting a moral intuition for me. Okay, let's take a look at the experimental prototype cadre here. So 6-inch, add 6 inches to the range characteristic of ranged weapons. That's great. That's super good. Super good for a shooting army. Your fusion melter range will be easier. Your rapid fire will be better. I don't know what else is requiring you to be within range thresholds, other than just being able to tag something you couldn't otherwise, right? As a general range increase. But in terms of overlapping rules that benefit from longer ranges, I think that would be it. Either way, I think it's makes your fusion guns super potent. Enhancements. Supernova Launcher. Tau Empire model only. Select one air-bursting fragmentation projector equipped by the bearer. Improve the strength characteristic of that weapon by 3, and improve the armor penetration and damage characteristics of that weapon by 1. Well, it sounds like a meaningful stat increase. However, I'm pretty sure... Isn't the airburst fragmentation projector just a indirect kind of havoc launcher type profile? Is that not the case? Let's do a bit of research on the Wahapadaya. Let's look for crisis suits, probably. Okay, airburst fragmentation projector is, yeah, it's an indirect fire blast weapon, 24 inches, so it'd be 26 in this, or sorry, it'd be 30 in this detachment. Strength 3, AP 0, 1 damage. So you would be Strength 6, AP 1, 2 damage. Well, 3 to 6 is actually a meaningful breakpoint. So that's not terrible if it's cheap. Can help clear up some fodder. Like, I think of Eldar Aspect Warriors. That's a little bit of AP. A little bit of AP to force the invuln. That's not bad. Pyro says, my friend is scared of my Screamer Killer and fights on death. Still pretty funny. Screamer Killer can be... It's definitely intimidating. I'm looking forward to using some. Looking forward to fielding some of the models I've already painted while I get the thematic Gengar list together. Pyro says, I say it through Adamic Eyes, we should have a Ryza-style detachment. We currently don't have a Ryza-style detachment. I am currently very ticked that one doesn't exist. However... what the 40k, if GW made a Ryza detachment, that would be cool. So yes, it's very bad. It's not the detachment day 1, but it's great they made one. However, it should have been day 1. Yes, yeah, I think we're on the same page there. Pyro, yeah, you should have had a Ryza. Basically, you want your sub-factions accounted for. And I don't like this attitude that a lot of people have that's like, yeah, well, people only care about Space Marine sub-factions, the other Xeno sub-factions don't matter. Well, like, that attitude produces the exact status quo that we're, like, suffering under right now. And if you want sub-factions to have significance, you can't only treat Space Marine sub-factions as if they're important and neglect all the others. And, like, that's kind of, like, my sensibility around it. I think that's such a terrible idea for not for longevity, but for maybe faction perceptions, right? You just can't help but come away like, oh, Space Marines are just so much more important because look at all the definitions they have around their sub-factions, right? Even if all it is rules and there's no character support for your, you know, your Beeltans and your High Fleet Kraken and all that stuff, you're devaluing. You're creating a perception that I think is not ideal, let's say. That is my TED Talk, I guess. Okay, let's go to the next one. Thermoneutronic projector. Wow, I did it. Tau Empire model only. Select one Tau Flamer equipped by the bearer. Improve the strength characteristic of that weapon by 2, as opposed to 3, and improve the AP and damage characteristics by 1. Well, so you'd have a strength. What standard are their flamers? Let's see here. They're standard 4, so strength 6 flamers, pretty good. AP 1, damage 2. Yeah, that's not terrible. Interesting how they're specifying. I feel like this is one of the few detachments I've seen where they're specifying change this specific weapon. And I guess it's the nature of Tau battle suits. They're so modular and often have multiple weapon systems. Plasma accelerator rifle? Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let's do the plasma railgun from Titanfall. Let's make it happen. You select a plasma rifle, and it's the same thing. Strength +2. Attacks. Oh. Did the other ones have attacks? Just strength and AP. Look, 1 extra attack on the plasma rifle makes it 2 shots. Strength 10, AP 4, damage 4. Dude, I'm feeling that. That's fun. I feel that's conversion worthy right there. Let's make it happen. Just a battle suit with a dedicated plasma rail rifle. Come on. And fusion blades. Classic. Classic fusion blades. Weird, though, that it's not in the Farsight detachment, because I think that's where it used to always be. Or the Farsight subfaction, right? It used to be their relic, I think? Maybe I'm misremembering, though. But it certainly, it does fit in here with the idea of all the prototype weapon systems. Select 1 fusion blaster equipped by the bearer. Improve the attacks characteristic of the weapon by 1. Oh my god. An extra attack on your meltagun. And improve the strength by 3. Oh my god. Strength 12. And has Melta 4. How about that? That is lace. That's the spice. I like these two a lot. This is super fun. You could have a super fun Tau army converted with your prototype weapon systems. This is pretty cool. It could have been in the Codex. Would have been nice not to have just 4. But look, I like this already. This is super cool. Super cool. Okay, so let's look at these stratagems. Just look at the heft of this one. Okay. Automated repair drones. Command phase. Regain D3+1. Lost wounds. Amazing. Amazing. Reactive impact dampeners. Shooting phase or fight phase. After an enemy unit has selected its targets, so it's defensive in its application, and until the end of the phase, each time an attack targets your unit, if the strength was greater than the toughness of your unit, subtract 1 from the wound roll. Okay, so -1 to wound with a modifier. This kind of perk, the conditional -1 to wound based on wounding on a 4+, or more than a 3+, is so common it could have been a USR. But I think that applies to, like, so many things, honestly. Experimental weaponry. In your shooting phase, 1 Tau Empire model from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time you roll 1 more dice to determine the number of attacks made with a weapon equipped by a model in your unit, you can re-roll the result. Oh, hot diggity. Look at this. Look at the flamer bomb going off. The flamer crisis team. The way they've configured crisis teams, though, I think they're all locked. I think we're looking at fire knife for the flamers. Nope, that's incorrect. We're looking at burst cannon and star. This is the Star Scythe battle suit squad. They have the flamers and burst cannons. Yeah, so your Star Scythe battle squad could each have be re-rolling the d6, the volume of shots, making them super reliable. Just to dump buckets of dice at people. What about the Sunforged? Oh, Sunforged is just Melta. Okay. Well, your flamers will have longer range now, which is significant. That is significant. That also opens up a wider range for their Overwatch, which has good application too in this detachment. Unless it specifies for the detachment rule that it's only in your shooting phase. Let's see. Nope, it's just adds 6 inches to the range. Yeah, that's a potent bit of area denial. For sure. For sure. Okay, so we have the Chonker stratagem. Experimental ammunition. Love this. Love this. Your shooting phase. 1 Tau Empire army from your army that's not been selected to shoot. Select one of the following to apply to your unit until the end of the phase. Improve the strength characteristic of ranged weapons by 1. So you can get a further strength. Crazy. Oh, improve the strength and AP by 1. But you get hazardous. Dude, this is super good. What if you're already hazardous? Wait, Tau doesn't have hazardous. Their technology is such that conventionally standard use does not cause hazardous, right? Yeah, extra strength and AP is wicked. That's awesome. Super good. I like this a lot. They have Threat Assessment Analyzer. Before we jump ahead, I actually really like the idea of experimental ammunition, and I'm playing with an idea for like a Tyranids experimental ammunition detachment hook. Because I think there's something there. But anyways, Threat Assessment Analyzer. In your shooting phase, you select 1 Tau Empire unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot. Oh, look, you have options. You have experimental ammunition, improve your stats, or you gain effects. And I guess you could use both. You get sustained hits 1 or lethal hits. Look at that. Until the end of the phase, ranged weapons equipped by models in your unit have the ability, and you can instead select the sustained hits 1 and lethal hits. Sorry. Instead, select sustained hits, lethal hits, and hazardous abilities to apply to those weapons. So you could get both with hazardous again. You can now target the same unit with the experimental ammunition and threat assessment analyzer stratagems in the same phase. Yeah, that's... Okay, so you can't stack them. Fair enough. Yeah, that'd be a bit much. They're really good on their own, though. I mean... I think this is fun. If you're a battle suit guy, and I think most Tau players are, this is fun stuff. And your reactive stratagem is the Neuro Web System Jammer. In your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, 1 Tau Empire Crisis unit from your army that was selected as the target of one or more of the attacking unit's attacks. Oh, until the end of the phase, your unit can only be selected. Oh, look at that. 18-inch lone op. Look, again, could have been a USR. Could have been a USR, yeah. So 18-inch lone op, super good. Super good to mess around with your opponent's targeting options. Only for crisis suits, but even still, I feel like with all these experimental weapons, you're going to have loads of crisis suits. I like this a lot. Regin Leaf says, oh, continued. Oh, wait, let me see. Yeah, it's one message above. People aren't wrong, though, with the 40k. People really do only care about the Imperium in some cases. This should not be impetus to simply ignore Xenos, but it's frustrating to see. To see people know a lot about their faction and then show no interest in any others. I only play 3 armies, but I still know a lot about the rest because I take an interest in 40k as a whole. Maybe I'm being too much of a fun policer. No, not at all, Regin Leaf. It's like not everyone is like everyone doesn't have a responsibility to learn everything about the lore, right? Um, and people are naturally, I think, going to be more interested in what they're invested in. That seems like expected human behavior, right? Because you're emotionally invested, financially invested, into what you collect. So you're gonna prioritize that in most cases. Um, yeah, but it's one thing to like poo poo, regardless of people's individual preferences for how wide reaching they are with lore knowledge and acquisition about the setting, the way you might be, Regin Leaf. I think the responsibility falls to Games Workshop to, regardless of the individual's preference to learn about different subfactions, I think it's on Games Workshop to make them significant, right? Because if they don't make the effort to make them significant, the sheeple, let's say, won't, right? They won't register them as significant, right? Um, for big-brained individuals with good taste like myself and those of you in chat, I think we know better. But a lot of people probably see Games Workshop only giving like attention and definition around Space Marine subfactions, and then they probably assume like, oh, I guess they're just more important, which I think is again bad perceptions for your IP and your faction distribution. Okay, so now we're on to more DACA Bad Moons, which I enjoy what the orcs have to offer. I've dabbled with some orcs. I've played some Kill Team. Okay, so DACA. Fitting name for a detachment rule for what is probably a Bad Moons. Look, you got the shiny shooters, you got Gobshot Thunderburst. Yeah, this feels right on point for Bad Moons. In your shooting phase, ranged weapons equipped by orcs, infantry, and walkers. So your Death Dreads. Your Death Dreads and your boys and your various specialist or elite infantry will have sustained hits too. That's super good. Yeah, the old DACA was... You got to make an extra attack if you scored a successful hit. And there was no cap, if I recall correctly. But... yeah, Sustained Hits 2. Sustained Hits 2 may seem egregious, but you have to compensate for the terrible ballistic skill that orcs have. So when they spike, it's gonna rain buckets, right? Which is fun. And then while the Wa is active, for your army, ranged weapons equipped by orcs, infantry, and walkers also gain assault. Amazing! Look, I love this. I like seeing detachments integrate with the army ruled layer. I think that makes things super interesting. It's kind of that similar design space we saw with combat doctrines in 8th and 9th edition and the Space Marine chapters, right? Where when you're in your doctrine, a special thing kicks off just for your subfaction, right? So you kind of have that here with the assault ability, which is cool. On the topic of sustained hits too, for a Badman's DACA, 40k or Games Workshop doesn't seem to like the design space mechanically for gaining extra attacks on critical hits. Personally, I always stand by the idea that is a more thematic abstraction, right? This is cleaner. It's faster for play. You roll a 6, you know that, oh, 2 extra dice. I'll add those in, right? Rather than, oh, I roll a 6, now let me roll another attack and see if it hits, right? So this is cleaner, But I think the thematic, as far as mechanics abstracting theme goes, I think the older Death to the False Emperor style of gaining extra attacks is more thematic for the orcs, because just like that orc, when you see that critical hit, you get excited and fire off another pull of the trigger, right? It's a very subtle distinction, but I bias towards thematic rules choices. Okay, on to enhancements. The Gobshot Thunderbuss. Ranged weapons equipped by the bearer have the devastating wounds and hazardous abilities. Those are good. Well, hazardous is only good if you if you score some critical wounds and proc those devastating. So I don't know offhand the orcs characters that could take this enhancement. Are there units that have high volume? Are there units that have anti? Right? These would be the questions you'd want to ask. Right? Like, does the teleport blaster? Right? Or the big mech shock attack gun? That's what I'm looking for. Shock attack gun is d6 plus 1 shots with blast. So it could pop off. It's not a bad choice. You're just hoping for 6s, which is fine. You know, the orcs aren't as elite as something like Eldar. They're not framed as glass cannons that are hyper maneuverable, so maybe they shouldn't have such certainty to force devastating wounds with things like aspect shrine tokens in the same way Eldar can. So maybe that's reasonable. We'll see if stratagems have any interplay in a minute or so. We have Dead Shiny Shooters. Ranged weapons equipped by models in the bearer's unit have rapid fire 1. Oh, that's sweet. You can give a whole squad rapid fire 1 if they don't already have it. I'm sure there's lots of orc candidates that you could lead that this would apply to. Like, what about Ludos? Yeah, so def guns on Ludas already have rapid fire 1. You could go with custom Mega Blastos. So you have 3 shots, so you get 4 at 12 inches, which is not terrible. Just go with rockets. Rockets are probably better. Probably not worth doing a deep dive here. I don't know enough about the orcs. I don't have that knowledge readily available of like units and datasheet abilities. Let's move on. Target and squigs. Orcs model only. Each time a model in the bearer's unit makes a ranged attack, add 1 to the hit roll. Again, another enhancement that affects models in the bearer's unit. Zogofen 8 Daka. The bearer's unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it fell back. It's fine. It's good. You know, it's a useful ability to have. Okay, orcs is still orcs. Fight phase. Love the name of this. Orcs is still orcs. It's a fight phase stratagem, of course. 1 orcs unit from your army that has not been selected to fight this phase until the end of the phase. Each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets enemy units, reroll a wound roll of 1. If that enemy unit is within range of an objective marker, you can reroll the wound roll instead. Okay, so you have like an assault intercessor or legionnaires type ability for a CP if you ever need it, which isn't terrible. Probably would be handy. It's any orcs unit, so it would work on your walkers as well. We have Get Stuck In Lads in your command phase. You select 1 unit in your army until the start of your next command phase. The WA is active for your unit, even if you have already called a WA. Wow, how about that? This means any abilities that are in effect while the Wa is active for your army will be in effect for your unit. Ah, thank you, designer's note. Yeah, so that means you get your assault back. Okay, huge show-offs. Look at this. Definitely a bad Moon's detachment. Your command phase. 1 Orcs Walker unit from your army, excluding Kilocans. So it's only for your Death Dreads? And maybe... Or Morkanauts? Maybe? Let me check. They're probably vehicles, though, not walkers, right? A Gorkanaut. Same thing. Same difference, right? Well, a Gorkanaut is a walker, so it would apply to them as well. Until the start of your next command phase, improve your move, leadership, and objective control characteristic by 1. And each time a model in your unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. So this is, I think, the same functionality as the Iron Storm Spearhead, Iron Hands detachment with the Dreadnought. It would work on Dreadnoughts the same way. I think very similar. Just a buff for the until your next turn. Gaining more leadership and OC. Well, gaining more OC is... If it gets you onto an objective and now you deny something you couldn't, I rate this. This is pretty useful. Pretty cool. Long, uncontrolled bursts. Start of your shooting phase, 1 Orc's character from your army. Select 1 enemy unit within 18 inches of your character model. Until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by Orcs models from your army have the Ignores Cover ability while targeting that unit. So look at that. Let's turn off cover with any character. Yeah, select 1 enemy unit within 18 inches of your character model. Yeah, so you don't have to hit with the character or anything. You can just point at the enemy unit. Okay, special shells in your shooting phase. Again, I feel like this was also a Bad Moons thing. I think so. 1 Orcs unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in your army makes a ranged attack that targets the closest eligible target within 18 inches, improve the AP characteristic of ranged weapons equipped by models in your unit by 1. Tremendous. Super good. Big fan of AP increases. Closest eligible unit within 18. Yeah, not terrible. I'm trying to think if this makes me sad about the salamanders forged in battle, which is like +1 to wound if you attack the closest unit within 12 inches. Like, yeah, I think it does. But already Oza Moment makes me feel bad because of that. So whatever. Okay, and the reactive stratagem in this attachment is called Daka. 1 used in your opponent's shooting phase, just after enemy is shot. You choose an arc unit from your army that had 1 or more of its models destroyed. So you need to suffer some casualty. Your unit can shoot as if it were your shooting phase, but must target only that enemy unit when doing so. I think I rate these kinds of aces to play. It's definitely going to rack your opponent's targeting decisions, I think. Right? And I think that's always a good thing. It's like the fact you have it makes it. It's like a deterrent almost. It just changes your opponent's behavior when they know you have a reactive shoot back or a reactive disembark or embark, or, you know, people don't want to give their enemy utility in their phase, let alone be shot at. And it's not restricted to it's 1 Orcs unit from your army, so you can use it on anything. Well, barring a unit of 1, because you have to be destroyed. Alright, well look, this is a fine Bad Moon's detachment. I'm not as excited as I was by the Tau one. I think the Tau one is super cool. Super, you know, there's a thematic list in here for sure. Definitely a hobby army could be built out of this. Just converting your special weapon systems. Super fun. Super fun stuff. Alright, well, I guess... Well, look at the time. I knew this would eat up a chunk of the stream. Let's return to some hobbying. Some important business. Ah, welcome, Francois. Welcome to the stream. Okay, we're going to continue painting some dots. Very fun stuff. We got to model our bugs. So we'll just hang out, live that hobby life. Okay, so let's evaluate if this pattern is, if our bright purple is of the right ratio. I think we're okay. Probably could reduce that a little bit. Down there in the lower leg. Looking a bit thick. Doesn't have to be too particular, but on the larger areas, oh fuck me. Look, I never said I'm perfect, okay? What I was gonna say was, on these smaller carapace pieces, like the legs, it doesn't matter as much to get a nice pattern going. I don't think. It's such a small surface area, right? You're not going to get much readability. But on the upward-facing, larger scales on the back, and maybe on the head, it's a bit more justifiable. These are 40mm base models, right? They're not exactly swarm units. Okay, so let's grab our... What color is this? It's a Vallejo. It's Vallejo German gray. Regin Leaf says, I agree that it's on GW to be fair to every faction. I guess my ire comes more from certain YouTubers who don't put effort into knowing wider lore. And some normies exhibit similar behavior. Yeah, you can frown about it. It's not ideal. Like, it's not the way things ought to be. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the YouTuber. Like, if it's a competitive, as an extreme example, let's just say it's someone who only plays competitively. It's not a lore channel. It's not, it's just about pro play. Just about making good play with the rules, right, and breaking all that kind of stuff down. Is there a responsibility for that person to be up on the lore? I don't think so. but I definitely think Games Workshop should be the ones to lead by example on that front. It's weird. It's weird that the players, I don't know, have more passion for for the IP than the company that manages it. At least it feels that way, right? At least it feels that way. I think these talons, these lictor style talons, are probably okay. Okay, so let's do the black dots. Do the black dots all over. Okay, we gotta break up these. Seems like the autofocus is sucking dog shit. Let's move my palette out of the way. Maybe the palette's throwing things off. Yeah, I think that did the trick. I think that did the trick. And now we just place some dots. Putting down dots. Super exciting painting process of Warhammer 40k. Look, it'll all be worth it. Basically, just want to break up those edges. Tony the person, welcome to the stream. Tony says, "Sir, may I have more pixels, please?" Thank you, Goodman. Oh, with regards to my lack of autofocus. I'll try my best. It's autofocus, so sometimes the machine spirit does not cooperate. Virgin Leaf says, I mean, who at GW, though? Oh. Virgin Leaf says, I mean, who at Games Workshop thought the Wraithbone change made any sense? The fan base is definitely more passionate than the IP holder. Yep, indeed. Indeed. Honestly, I bet the Wraithbone change in that whole controversy is probably just incidental. It's probably just an oversight. They didn't do their editing. They didn't cross-reference if they're contradicting anything. Someone proofread and says, it sounds like Warhammer. Sounds like a codex paragraph. Sounds like a paragraph of lore from a codex. And they sent it to the presses. We need some more water on this. Load up our brush a bit more. There's the dots I'm looking for. There's the dots. I also suppose the game I played recently with Tyranids was probably my first game playing as them since they got that balanced data slate change with the Tyrannofex and the Zoanthropes and the Neurotyrant. Pretty good, honestly. Didn't have too many terrible whiffs with the Tyrannofex. I ran Rupture Cannon because that's what my heart wants. I'm 99% certain the Acid Spray is the superior option. Just for the over a hard to shift, like a T12 chassis unit with lots of wounds that can blanket damage. It can be used for various defensive stratagems depending on your detachment. With a massive area of effect for Overwatch, right? It's quite good. Quite good value. Especially if you have a Hive Tyrant and you're just doing it for free. But I love the Rupture Cannon because it's my Gear Rex T-Fex, you know? Gotta have the Railgun Rupture Cannon. Ace of Dragons says, I'm also painting a Leaper. Well, here's to you, Ace of Dragons. May we both paint our Leapers well. Kid Bash Carnage says, hope all well, bro. So busy at work, barely time to watch, but always time to support. Much appreciated, Kid Bash Carnage. Hail to Kid Bash. Kit Bash Carnage also has a channel where he features his Kit Bashes. And, well, I don't want to sell it short. It's not just Kit Bashes. Really, these are conversions we're talking about. One does not simply confuse a Kit Bash with a conversion. Though I feel most people do. But I know what's up. Not much real estate, or not much surface area towards the ends of these talons. So I guess it just is what it is. What else happened in that test game of mine? Oh, Shadow in the Warp actually did something meaningful. Which is, it's just one of these rules, right, that are so dependent on your opponent failing the rolls you need them to, which is never ideal. And you kind of have to just swing with it, try and put a narrative spin on it, and hope that makes it sit better with you if it fails to do nothing. Look how brave the enemy is. This is amazing. But generally speaking, I found with Shadow in the Warp, I use it on my opponent's command phase when they're poised to score, right? Because then maybe they'll fail and then you don't score primary. That's usually kind of how I looked at it. But in yesterday's game, I found that my opponent happened to draw Defend a Stronghold. And I figured odds are I could rapid ingress my my Parasite of Mortrex to threaten his stronghold, which is a bit of a gamble. But I thought because I will likely be able to, based on how his units are positioned, I'll do Shadow in the Warp, right? Because now I'm like doubling my odds of denying Defense Stronghold. And man, a whole bunch of units failed to Battle Shock, including like Lycus and the Warp Spiders, which were being used as a defensive tool to defend Stronghold, like as an Overwatch kind of source. And now that it failed or felt a Battle Shock, I was able to kind of basically ignore Overwatch on a faction that doesn't have that ability. So it's dice dependent, but it certainly felt good when it came together. Right? The dream manifested in that game. Except for the barbed ovipositor spawning rippers. That failed to wound. It was big sad. Okay, so I think this is the last segment of black spots. Yeah, I quite enjoy the thematic play that comes from the spooky Tyrannid lone op rapid ingressing in. There's something pure about it. And the Parasite does like double spooky theme because of the potential body horror alien spawning rippers interaction it has if it can kill a enemy infantry model, which I like. But I wonder if the Lictor would be a better choice. Lictor has free rapid ingress. It doesn't move as far. But if you're 9 inches away... No, you don't want to be 9 inches away, because then you get shot. You kind of want to be outside of 12. The Lictor moves 8. So then you're kind of stuck for a harder charge. I don't know. It's like overlapping function, but they kind of operate in different capacities. I guess the Parasite, you could say, would be better at denying objective control, because it can cause battle shock in the fight phase. It can spawn rippers, which reduces enemy OC as well. But the Lictor could kill a leader with precision and give you a CP. Okay, what's our purple situation? We're gonna need some more purple. We're gonna need more... Oh, it's just called purple. There it is. Give me some of that purple stuff. Kid Bash says, it's just a lot of carnage. It's all good, man. I'm a big fan of people who are passionate about the hobby. I don't know, that's what makes this hobby special to me. The game is all in service of the hobby, I think. You know, I recently watched a battle report on Winter's channel, Winter's SEO. And it was a battle report with Luton. The lore channel Luton09, I think. And in that battle report, it was a Necrons versus Space Marines, but it featured a custom character with custom data sheet created by Luton. And I thought it was just the coolest. Like, I love that shit. And I thought it was a pretty tasteful character based off of Zera's. Based off of that chassis, the datasheet chassis. So if you guys are into homebrewing your own characters in a similar fashion, I would recommend that video. It's pretty cool. Okay, let's put some purple dots now. See, the dots just never stop. We go from our German gray to purple to, I think, bright violet. We need more water. We need more saturation. Complete global saturation. That's what we need. That might be a botched quote from Albert Wesker. Something about global saturation. You know, Resident Evil 5 is... I figure at some point Capcom will do a remake of it. And I don't know how I'm going to feel about it if they make it... if they shift it more towards classic survival horror. It probably will be a better game, given the track record of all the remakes. But I adore that arcade gameplay loop of Resident Evil 5, especially in Mercenaries. Like, it's just an awesome gameplay loop. It's very satisfying. I tell you what, if Capcom just made a dedicated Mercenaries game with the full roster, they could take my money. Look at that. We got the thorax. Purple's done on this side. Regin Leaf says, would you ever review homebrew content for your community? I think so. Yeah, that sounds like it would be pretty fun. I'm sure we could do it in a way that is, even if I found it to be poor, we could still do it constructively, in a way that wouldn't feel like people are on blast or being talked down about. You know, it's not like you don't want a public shaming vibe, which is not something I would ever dare, like, even, that's like, who's the villain, right? Yeah, I think it'd be cool. I mean, some of the stuff I've seen in my Discord that's shared in the homebrew section is pretty, like, it's to my sensibilities. I find myself liking it. Yeah, but I think that might be a fun, Would be a fun thing to do. Maybe I should make a post, a YouTube post, asking for people who are interested to aggregate that stuff over on the Discord server. Because I think that could be a bit of fun content, right? If I recall correctly, the one I remember liking quite a bit was an Iron Warriors detachment. Yeah, the patterning becomes a little tricky when the poses are all bunched in like this. Doesn't leave much room. Is that something you have ideas for, Reginleaf? Do you have homebrew rules ideas? Could be detachments or characters. There's definitely a rubric we could, or I guess I could, essentially lay out in terms of evaluating that stuff to achieve a tasteful outcome. A tasteful score. Right? I think you want to do a relatable analysis. Or a relative analysis. Maybe that's the right way to term it. So is this a chapter master? Okay, let's look at our relative comparison points. Is your homebrew chapter master better than every other chapter master in existence, right? You want to do those checks. Because if your homebrew is better than every other chapter master out there, we begin to lean towards the Mary Sue category. Now, you don't want your homebrew being a Mary Sue. You want them to be cool guys, right? You want your homebrew characters to be cool guys that suffer greatly. That's essentially what you want. You want them to win sometimes too, but I don't know. You're making a character for grimdark warfare, right? So they shouldn't be so OP they are incapable of losing or failing. Because even your your Primarchs get offed from the table, right? Even the Silent King gets booted from the table. And you can always spin it if you don't like your homebrew characters dying. I mean, I don't think characters are really dying when you play them. I kind of look at the games being played as kind of like a one-off lens. You have a named character who's reduced to 0 wounds. He's probably emergency escape, emergency fallback type situation. Survive to fight another day. Then your rank and file guys can die. That is sort of the beauty of Tyranids. You're always going to just respawn. Always going to just respawn elsewhere. I really should have done the purple dots everywhere else, but I think it's more interesting to feel the completion as it happens. That's probably poor phrasing. We'll just let that sit. We'll just let that stew. We'll let that stew in the ether. But look, the patterning just comes together so nicely. Gonna have to clean that up. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a little tricky to work around this arm the way it's posed, but it is what it is. Reginald Leaf says it'd be cool to see you react to homebrew stuff that either needs tweaking to feel closer to official content or better reflect fluff. I have a Votan detachment because I hate how little their index feels like the fluff slash interacts with the army rule. I also came up with Votan fan units because I get bored and obsess over dwarfs. Nice. You know what? You might be onto something here, Reginald Leaf. I'm not just saying that. I think there might be a series that could be turned out of something like this, right? I'm thinking similar in format to Northern Exile's Hobby Nightmares, in the fact that it's people sending things in that's being showed, right? Not in the fact that I think these are bad stories, right? I'd be actually really pumped to see what people are, the creative output of the community. That's what the hobby is all about. Yeah, I think it makes sense, Reginald Leaf. I will, likely. I don't want to say anything firm, but I think I'll likely be looking into something around this topic. I think it's on theme for me. Yeah, Votan probably could. They could probably. Well, it's because they have so little units and so little detachments. That would probably go a long way to. Like, Homebrew would go a long way with them. A lot of design space there. Okay, so the back two carapaces are looking nice. Certainly looking adequate. Reginald Leaf says, my Silent King got taken down by anti-fly weapons once, and I was salty as fuck. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, technically, I guess he is flying. Really, hover should be a keyword for these, like, hefty objects. Like a repulsor. Which now just doesn't have fly because it was problematic. So I understand, but yeah, hover should be a keyword that gives the affordances of moving over things pretty freely, but not large terrain in the way fly does. Like, does a monolith really fly? I guess so. It makes it more alien. I just think of Star Trek, those Borg cubes. So I guess, yeah, I guess the monolith can fly. All, all big and chunky and alien-like. We're probably going to wrap up in about 15 minutes or so, guys. Just FYI. I was meaning to check the comments on my detachment autopsy video in case there were any interesting suggestions for detachments to cover in that sort of format, but if there's nothing that intrigues me, I'll probably end up doing a Tiamat list build, because I'm definitely on the Tyranids bandwagon for the next while. We're gonna see Gengar through, and I think it's gonna be pretty glorious. I'll probably, what I'd like to do is eventually do a thematic list build for Gengar, but with just the models. Just the models on camera. Which I think would be kind of funny. A little bit of a twist. A twist from the usual. Yeah, I guess it kind of does double duty as a showcase video as well, which is neat. What do you guys think? Is 6 Zoanthropes enough? I'm torn between 6 or like one squad of 6 led by a Neurotyrant and then an extra 3. But I wonder if that's too much. They are fairly versatile with their different firing profiles. And they're decent as an Overwatch gamble with the Neurotyrant because you can kind of lean into it a little bit. For better or for worse, I'm sort of committing to the Synaptic Nexus detachment, so it has the power of the Hive Mind enhancement, which buffs the Flamer of the Psychic Scream Flamer of the Neurotyrant pretty well. So when you have that on your Neurotyrant, it's not terrible as a frequent Overwatch candidate. But maybe when you extend to like nine Zoanthropes, you're crossing that threshold where it's no longer giving you a benefit for what you're investing in that same way. The other thing overall, I really don't like the synaptic imperative army rule. I think it's poor. In fact, I would actually do detachment autopsy on it. Funnily enough, but that's the detachment where we have the spiritual successor to Kronos' deepest shadow stratagem, and I love that shit. I like that capacity to inflict mortal wounds when things have fallen to battle shock. But just like in just like in many other things, previous edition Coexes did it better because the deepest shadow stratagem was way cooler in that you used it on a psyker, and would force them to take. You'd use the stratagem when they would choose to manifest a psychic power, and it would force them to take that psychic test on 1d6 instead of 2. Meaning they're way more likely going to fail, and sometimes they'll outright fail if you wait for a hard to charge psychic power. And what that did for you, other than forcing a fail on a power you want them to fail, it would also interplay. See, your back-end tools would interact with each other because you have a warlord trait in Kronos. I think it was a warlord trait. That would allow you to deal D3 mortal wounds to any psyker in range of the bearer whenever they fail a psychic test, which was super cool. Super niche, but man, it's so thematic it hurts. Just super flavorful stuff, which I adore. In Synaptic Nexus, the stratagem is called Smothering Shadow, which is also a worse name. But it has a more general use case, so I can't hate it completely. It's definitely a trade-off. It's less thematic and less mechanically satisfying from a mechanics abstracting the theme point of view. But Smothering Shadow in 10th edition does do more damage, because you're essentially rolling for grenades. But on 3+ instead of 4+, which is pretty awesome. And you can use it in any phase when an enemy fails a battle shock test. So it's also more versatile. Regin Leaf says, would you bring back biomorphs? I used to think they were a really cool way of customizing and kitting out NIDs down to the individual model. So maybe, Regin Leaf, but it depends what you mean by biomorph. Are you referring to the upgrades like adrenal glands and toxin sacs? Or are you talking about something more specific? Are you talking about weapon options? All weapon options are there. And for the most part, there's equal trade-offs depending on what you use, except for things like the rupture cannon, which I still think is not as good as the acid spray, even with its upgrade. Would I? Okay, so originally says yes, those. I don't remember if they had a specific name, but adrenal glands, thoracic hooks, etc. Yeah, so you had flesh hooks on the. I think lictors had them, warriors for sure had them as an upgrade. It definitely complicates things, and if you're gonna do war gear, it's cool. Um, funnily enough, I'm not especially I'm not a stickler for those particular biomorphs necessarily, those upgrades. I'd want more, if I'm going to push for rules like paradigm changes for Tyranids, I want more freeform customization of weapon options, which goes counter to like this whole like modus operandi of GWs where they're only putting options for things that are sold in the box. Right? But I was a big fan of the configurations where you would take weapon options off of one kit and put on another because it's your hive fleet. If you want your hive tyrant to have the double death spitters, or the double devourers, right? On your winged flying hive tyrant, like why not? I want those sorts of biomorphs back. I think they're more meaningful. Though you could probably have a detachment structured around adaptive biomorphs with things like toxin sacs and adrenal glands, though. I think that might be an interesting design space to flex that. Yeah, if every it's a weird it's a weird thing to consider because I'm finding I'm like contradicting a previous position I held, right? Like rewarding the hobby efforts of players, right? And people took the time to like, yeah, I want my toxin sacs, I want my adrenal glands, I want them to have significance. Which, yes, those things should be rewarded, but it's such a proliferous upgrade. It's like every unit could have those options. So I don't know if it's necessarily worth. Here's a question. I wonder if the newer Tyranid kits have toxin sacs and adrenal glands. I feel like they might not. I feel like they might not. I don't recall the Leviathan stuff having any. But we would write that off as easy to build, right? But I don't think the Biovore, that's multi-part. I don't think it has any. I think the Tyranids have evolved past the need for adrenal glands and toxin sacs, sadly. At least in GW's eyes. Leaf says maybe that sort of thing is better for Kill Team. I just remember having fun choosing what to put on my dudes and having an impact on the game. A detachment with that focus could be really cool. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Like an adaptive, like a real Gorgon detachment, right? Invasion Fleet is like a soft Gorgon, but I don't quite like how like you're okay. So the design concept of the invasion fleet detachment is you're looking at the enemy army and you're going to choose a perk that'll adapt you best for success against this target. But when I when I read Gorgon's lore about how they adapt in the battle. In as the battle's ongoing, they're adapting. I want mechanics that reflect that kind of adaptability. And you have one enhancement that I think does that. But I think if you center all your stratagems and enhancements sort of to that layer of adaptation rather than choosing sustained hits versus infantry or lethal hits versus high toughness targets. That's just way more interesting. It gives you more play. Like, I understand skill or complexity floors are a thing that you have to consider for detachments and rules, but I still think you want room to play, right? It's just not as interesting if you have a rule that says choose something when the battle starts, and now that's what it is, and it well, it's static, right? It's not. My preferences are I like dynamic rules. I want opportunities to make interesting decisions. Right? I mean, maybe you solve. Maybe my criticism is remedied just by having a stratagem in Invasion Fleet that allows you to change the army wide perk that you chose. Right? Maybe it's a 2 CP thing, very expensive, and you just say, you know what? The moment of sustained hits is over. Let's go for lethals, and then you're adapting on the fly. Right? Maybe that's the simple solution. I guess the other reason why I thought of bringing up Gorgon in relation to adaptability is because they were supposed to have the most adaptive toxins. And that's where you would have a lot of poison stratagems in previous codexes. And I quite... I can't help but connect that with a... If you have a detachment with toxin sacks, it feels like, maybe that's like a Gorgon detachment, right? Your poisonous influence detachment. Right? Maybe it operates a bit like... Well, maybe not like Contagions. Because I don't think it's an aura in the same way Nurgle's Rot is an aura. But maybe you could have a Warlord trait that does that. Or an enhancement, rather. Which is, I think, what Poisonous Influence used to do. I think it was a Warlord trait that would cause mortals in engagement range. Or something like that. Okay. Well, it's not the best dots, but we're... Leaper number 3 is... He's shaping up. Leaf says, what if it's just each model in the unit can take the same adaptation, so it's not as granular, and your whole unit gets the special rule? Yeah, that's sort of in line with what I'm kind of like dabbling with myself, but It overlaps in perks, but it's slightly different from a thematic point of view. But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, Reginald. I think it is more interesting if, similar to Marks of Chaos, if you could give units different adaptations. I think that would be super cool, and then you could have a stratagem to like toggle. I'm gonna switch this one's adaptation. We're gonna, you know, synaptically force immediate adaptation. Maybe it costs some mortal wounds, right? To use up all that energy. A lot of processes would have to take place rapidly, right? Could cause some harm on some of the unit. And then you could change whatever your adaptation perk is, right? I think you could have a pretty, not a huge list of options, but you could have, it doesn't have to just be 3. It could be 4. I mean, there's 5 Marks of Chaos to choose from, so I feel like that's you know, a limit of sorts, you know? It's a point of comparison you could try not to exceed. 5 adaptations, and you'd be like, oh, I want this one to be sustained or lethal, or this one to maybe be a bit more armored or something. Maybe a bit more tough. Maybe that's the way you go about it. I don't know. I just think it's more evocative of a hyper adaptation kind of design hook. Well, probably should wrap up soon. Technically, I should have already wrapped up. We'll finish up this lower leg panel. Let's put some dots in here. Just put in some dots. Yeah, that side's good. Inside's, it's kind of ugly, but adequate. We'll leave it. This needs our purple stuff. Center thorax. Crotch also needs purple stuff. And his headpiece. And then he'll be ready for the bright violet. What is this called? Light violet. Okay, well, I guess we'll wrap up here. Good news is we're gonna get a. Oh, I was gonna say a spin job of these guys, but probably won't do a spin job of them because then I have to base them, and I want to base a whole bunch at a time. But, man, such nice models. Such nice noodles. All right. Let's catch up with chat before we go. Reginald Leaf says, GW likes their 6s for options, because you can roll a d6. With roughly 5 choices, sounds good either way. Yeah, that's true. You could randomize your perks. You could have a d6 table, or a table that could be used with the d6 kind of function. And then if you do have 6 options, then you could have an enhancement where you could have 2, right? You could have 2 instead of 1, but you have to roll for it, which is kind of fun. Yeah, I like that a lot. And you could also have an enhancement that just always allows the bearer to switch his unit, right? Like a vector, an adaptation vector kind of enhancement. That's super cool. Super cool stuff. Good design space there. Well, anyways, guys, if you made it to the end of the stream, you guys are the real hobby heroes. Thanks to everyone who joined in and shared in the hobby camaraderie. I think that's everything that goes into the outro of these, so I will catch you guys in the next one. See ya.